Mark, where were you born?
I was actually born at the Royal Free Hospital in Islington,
Oh, really?
in London, but we then moved to Morden and then to Whitstable in Kent.
So, can you tell me what year or decade that was?
Well, I can't say I'm a child of the 50s because I was born in 1960. But I suppose it's not too bad to be a 60s baby, is it?
I think not. But you say you moved from you moved around in London. Where did you actually spend your childhood?
Well, mostly as a toddler in Morden, Surrey, and then at the age of 3, which would have been, of course, 63, I moved to Whitstable in Kent, where I stayed there until I left home
Which
in
was
my 20s.
in your 20s. You left home then. So you lived with your parents,
Hmm.
and they were your birth parents.
No, I was adopted.
Oh.
Yes, my original mother, unfortunately, was in those days was a young lady who unfortunately became pregnant, or in my case, fortunately became pregnant, and of course, in those days, it was the done thing to be put up for adoption. So that's how I ended up becoming a Sinclair rather than what was a Wise, which would have been my surname.
So you were adopted as a baby,
Yes,
and so all your memories are of just one single family.
that's correct. Yes,
What did your adoptive parents? Should we call them your adoptive parents or parents? Which would you prefer?
they are my parents.
Your parents. So what did your parents do?
Well, Mum, Iris, God rest her soul, who passed away a few years ago at the age of 82, she was a housewife. And my father, still with us, now 86, was a printer and worked in lithographic printing and plate making and went on to great success running his own business when we moved to Whitstable.
You speak of them obviously with affection.
Absolutely adore them.
Yes.
I wouldn't be where I am today, as they say, without
And
them.
they clearly loved you too. So they will have given you toys. You will have had toys. The first thing I would like to talk about is a teddy bear. Did you have a teddy bear?
Well, yes, I remember it very well, and it was actually bought because I was a spoilt child. I must be honest with everyone, I was a spoilt child. And at my paternal mum's behest, we had gone to a local church thing. I was very, very young, but I remember it quite vividly. And I saw this teddy bear, which had been handmade by one of the ladies of the local Women's Institute. And I said, I want it, I want it, I want it. And I never got it, not on the day anyway. And about 3 or 4 days later, I discovered that my grandma had actually bought it off the lady because it hadn't sold at the fete for 14 old shillings, which I don't know what that equates to now in decimalisation. And I had that teddy right up until the poor thing fell apart when I was about 14 or 15. My constant comfort and friend.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you about actually. What sort of relationship you had with this bear? Tell me about it anyway. Describe it in more detail. It was hand knitted.
It was. Yes, it was. I don't think it was knitted. I think it was stuffed fabric of some sort, but it was furry, a bit like that Borg fabric stuff, which was quite modern in those days.
How big was it?
About that big. He was
Well,
white.
That looks like about 18 inches to me, maybe even more, 20 inches. That's quite a big bear.
It was for a little one. It was a big bear, but I mean, it was almost like having a brother.
Because it must have been about the same size as you.
Well, yes. I mean, I think I was a bit taller than that, but he was brilliant white, with lovely those sort of amber eyes with black pupils, and he had a little button nose here like that, and a little smile there, and his paws were, sewn on, I think, stitched on. But I remember him very well, and he never had a name.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. Was he Teddy, or did he have a name?
I just think I called him Teddy.
I think most people do, don't they, actually?
Yes, and because I sucked my thumb,
Yeah.
this one, until I was 8, he was there with me sucking my thumb, and I think I probably grew out of childish things about 8, but I actually stopped sucking my thumb, but my teddy still stayed with me until, unfortunately, with all the wear and tear of me being a young rather industriously vibrant and energetic young person that I don't think he could have survived more than probably the age of 14. When I was 14, so it had been 1974, I think that he finally had to go, unfortunately, into the bin.
He went into the bin?
Yeah, because he just couldn't be repaired. We did also have a dog that didn't, Petra, who didn't do much help, I can tell you, because she would pick it up and then, you know what dogs do, that business like that. So it was quite a shocking thing to find him one day in not too many bits. All the stuffing had fallen out.
Oh dear, because you were obviously very close to this bear. You had a close relationship with him.
Yeah, I think by 14 though it wasn't as important as it had, because I went to boarding school, so he came to boarding school with me, and in one holiday in about 74 the dog almost ate him.
When did you go to boarding school?
From the age, would you believe, from 1967 at the age of 7 all the way through to when I actually left in 1976, having taken my O-levels and completely failing all of them apart from 2. Geography and technical drawing, which have done me no favours whatsoever at all over the years.
So this bear of yours, when you took him to school, was that what other children did, or was that specific to you?
A lot of the children at Kent College, or well, Vernon Home first, from 67 through to 71, and then from 71 to 76, that was the preparatory school and that was the upper school, this is in Canterbury. Most of them, a lot of them anyway, were from the colonies, and a lot of them worked in, their fathers and parents worked in the army or the air force or the navy, so they were always very, very interesting because they were from all over the world, although the old British colonies, it was fascinating. Got lots of little presents from people all over the world, and of course what did they always have in majority? They had teddies. So it wasn't a Nancy thing to have a teddy, it was that everyone sort of had it. It was very much like that sort of Brideshead Revisited business. You took your teddy with you everywhere, as Sebastian did in Brideshead Revisited, always had his teddy about him, even into his time at university. But no, that wasn't supposed to be any problem at all with anyone, because everyone had them.
So did you play specific games with him, or was he just a comfort that was there with you all the time?
It was a comfort.
You don't still have him, unfortunately.
No, I'm afraid.
But
no.
you have memories of him. What are your best memories of him?
I think the excitement of Christmas. Because, unbeknownst to me, Santa was going to come down. But I could never understand, because we didn't have a chimney, so I didn't understand how Santa got in. I thought he had a key or something like that. And he let's just stop there.
Ooh.
Start again. Because I thought Santa had a key to get in at Christmas and all that. And I would discuss this with Teddy, because there was always at the bottom of the bed the sock. And, 4 o'clock in the morning, Teddy and I, because we didn't want to wake the house up, unbeknownst to me, we thought everyone was watching. Right, so I was able to put my hand in the sock and I could feel this, never took anything out, too excited to go to sleep. And we had things like half a crown, which is now 12.5p, once even a 10-shilling note, which was in salmon in colour, probably a satsuma, some sweeties, and I always used to get Edinburgh Rock because my adoptive family were Scottish. So unlike the rock you get in Brighton, which is very hard, Edinburgh Rock is much softer, so it wasn't too bad on the teeth. I wish I hadn't done so much because I haven't got many of my own left now.
Yes, I remember Edinburgh Rock very well, and it came in a variety of pastel colours.
Oh, yeah.
And it was that funny shape, and they weren't very long. But you shared it with your Teddy.
Oh, yes. Teddy, well, pretend.
But that's your best memory of him, Christmas time and sharing the sock.
Sharing the sock, and I almost talking to him. I wonder what's in. Invariably, it was the same thing every year because you always got the same. They always got the Bruins Annual and Earl Willie, which was a great, and they're still published in the Sunday Post in Scotland now. And I got that every year. Couldn't understand because we lived down south, and most of the way it was written because it was all in this sort of Scottish Rabsy Nesbitt style of speak that very like business. But We knew what we were getting most of the time. But yeah, I remember great memories of him sitting there right beside me, and we're looking down at this sock and trying to, without waking the household, trying to actually creep in to see what else was going to be in the bottom of that sock. Sometimes we got quite a good few surprises, I can tell you. Luckily, no mousetrap.
No mousetrap. There's that wonderful feeling of the sock. That's something I remember from my childhood as well. So I can understand you would want to share the pleasure of that with your companion bear. But did you at any time have any dolls? Dolls can be quite a wide range of things. Did you have other toys that were not teddy bear?
Oh yes, I mean
Action Man or anything like that?
yes. Action Man came later. One thing I do remember, because I always wanted one, was a play suit which actually you turned into a Dalek from Doctor Who, which was made of PVC.
That was for you to wear.
And
That wasn't so much a
Yeah,
doll.
but you then became the doll.
You became the
Because then you were play acting. Hence, I became an actor, I suppose, because I was play acting all the time. But no, Action Man I did get later, but that was in my teens. And much later on, probably when I probably lost Teddy, I probably went down that avenue. I do remember that he only came in one uniform, khaki, but that would have been in the sort of early 70s, mid-70s.
Yes, I was going to say, you must have grown up quite a bit by then, and that would have been the early Action Man.
Oh, very early.
What sort of games did you play with him?
Strangely enough, probably more, not so much to do with war or anything like that. It probably was more along the science fiction thing, like your Doctor Who's and all that sort of business, because obviously by that time, Doctor Who had UNIT in it, which was an army, United Nations Intelligence Task Force. So I used my Action Men to be UNIT in Doctor Who. And of course we had little Dalek models and things like that. Even ended up making our own 8mm films, because that's how sport I was. I was given a camera to make little films with, which we did, as almost toys, and then turning into a career later in life.
Well, that's actually very creative, isn't it? That
Yeah.
is indeed very
Well, that's the
creative.
wonderful thing about toys.
Well, yes, it is indeed. So that Action Man toy actually must have been quite important to you from a creative and developmental point of view.
Oh yes, because it became part of play acting, wanting to be in the real thing, but you could do it on a much smaller scale. We didn't make films with the Action Men. We actually, dressed up as much as we could. Normally wearing my mother's bed sheets, actually. Poor, bless her, cotton socks. But we were able to, it instigated doing, that formal play with dolls and things, or Action Man and robots and things like that. That then moved us into doing things that were far more creative, that we wanted to actually see later. That's why we had 8mm films.
Experiential.
So, yes, absolutely.
But it clearly was a very creative toy for you. How did you feel about it? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the toy itself?
Oh yes, I did, yes. They then started, I think, to bring in more uniforms or different things he could wear. I remember it, I don't think I got one. One ended up, came out with a beard. I don't think I got one of those. And then one had a moving eye.
So you had more than one Action?
Oh, yes.
How many did you have?
I probably 3 or 4, I think. But they all look the same. So they look like clones. But the only way you could tell them apart was by putting a different uniform on them.
You were clearly very fond of your Teddy and were very heartbroken when he finally went. Do you still have your Action Men toys?
Afraid not. We've moved too many times, and I think foolishly what happens is you put away childish things and you tend to forget them. Recently, my mother died about 3 or 4 years ago now. I found out that my mother was a hoarder of all sorts of things. So I'm currently going through, I never know what I'm going to find next, but the photographic evidence I have of things is extraordinary. And of course, with somebody, that's so close to you, like your mum, who passes away, when somebody dies, it's like a videotape being wiped, and then suddenly that instigation of them giving you a memory that can start your memory into something you may have forgotten has gone. So looking at old photographs and all that does immediately secure the fact that I've completely forgotten about that and all that. So I've got pictures of me as a toddler with my toys, and I only found them about 2 weeks ago. I'm slowly going through them much to my shock, I was quite a pretty child. I was an ugly baby, but a pretty toddler.
Well, toddlers are charming in themselves. Anyway,
In themselves, yeah.
But do you remember who gave you the Action Man? Who introduced Action Man into your life? Your father or your mother?
Probably my father. But as I say, although I was adopted, I couldn't want for anything. I was really, both my sister and I, Valerie was also adopted, were spoilt. Totally spoilt. Anything she wanted, she got. If she wanted a pony, she got one, and she did, called Star, and guess who had to muck it out?
I
Big
can't
brother.
possibly imagine.
Big brother, yes. I don't think she was very quite debutante in her manner, so her toys were live things. Of course, I got a dog, but I didn't have to muck the dog out. Her toy was a pony of 14 and a half hands.
So were you... I mean, you've talked about the creative kind of play that you had with the Action Man. Were you also quite a practical person? If you're mucking out ponies and things, that seems to me that you might be quite practical.
I was very practical, but I was terribly lazy at school.
Well, the reason I ask about the practicality is because I wonder if you had construction toys, if you had building toys. My first son was born in the same year as you, and my recollection is that the first really construction toys for little children came in round about that time. And that was Lego.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have Lego?
Prior to that, we just had the wooden blocks with ABC on it.
Yeah.
Then, yes, we had Lego. I had Meccano, I remember.
That was around already, wasn't
Yeah,
it? And
Lego, which is it comes from Europe, Dutch, I think it is, and they. You got just a box of Lego. You didn't get them as pre-packed, make this up. You had to make your own up. So you could be quite creative. Of course, most of mine were starships and things like that because I was very much into science fiction.
I'm beginning to pick this up.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, Star Trek, all that
Yes.
stuff. But I remembered having Lego Meccano. Meccano I don't think I really got on with because Lego looked quite modern to me and Meccano looked quite old-fashioned.
Well, of course, Meccano was much older, and so was Airfix. I remember my older brother having that, the wonderful smell of glue.
Oh, yes.
But when you were born, when you were a toddler and a young child growing up, Lego coming in, and it was quite basic, wasn't it? It was just a few different shapes.
Yes.
With none of the very complicated stuff that you can get now.
Mm-hmm.
So you must again have been quite creative with that.
Oh yes. The thing that I remember mostly about Lego is my mother complaining totally all the time about hoovering, because it would block her hoover.
Did you enjoy playing with construction toys?
Not particularly.
You were much more creative than
there was
making
more
things with your hands.
yes. And of course I played the piano as well, so I was actually more along the art side of thing and media, that sort of thing. Very interested in television, all that sort of business. And of course doing things with construction toys, I said, oh no, that's something for scene people to do. The set designers and all that can do that. That's not in my ken. I'd either rather be in front of the camera acting or behind the camera directing. Doing the rest of it, to me, I thought quite mundane. I wouldn't be able to sort of carry on enjoying it. If I hadn't been an actor, I'd have been a chef, but I found out what the hours were like doing a chef, and that would have become a chore. So I ended up being an actor. And of course, being that creative in my youth, and certainly in the 60s, when things like Star Trek and Doctor Who and all that started, it did open a whole new universe literally a whole universe of creativity and imagination. And I thank Doctor Who many, many times for it. And it's still on today.
It certainly is, with a new actor.
With a new doctor.
With a new actor. I want to go on then. So we've talked about your teddy bear. Mm-hmm. We've talked about your action men. We've talked about the practical toys, the construction toys. And we also talked about you mentioned the fact that you really wanted that teddy bear and were quite sad when you didn't think you were going to get it. Were there other toys that you would have liked to have had that you didn't have?
Well, not so much toys, because what I really wanted was a full-size Dalek. But there was only about 6 of them made for the programme, so apart from getting a cardboard box and painting circles on it and all that, no, that wasn't going to be, not in my youth. However, I did buy one from Elstree Film Studios when I was 17.
But you talk about being very spoiled.
I was.
So I reckon that you were given most of the things that you wanted.
Oh, if it was available, we would go up Christmas to Fallen Masons, Harrods. Dad would go and get all his stuff from Austin Reed. We'd go and see the Christmas lights, and we'd have a nice meal out, probably at an Angus steakhouse or something like that, because it was very posh in those days. But we would certainly go to Harrods, and that's where everything I wanted and my sister wanted. I don't think they got the pony from Harrods, but I can tell you...
Well, they could have got the pony.
They probably could have. You could get anything in Harrods in those. If you wanted an elephant, you probably could buy an elephant in Harrods.
You could.
But, no, I was very, very, very spoiled, both of us. And when my father remarried after my parents got divorced back in 1972, he then had another 3 children of his own rather than the adopted versions, my step brother and 2 sisters, and they weren't in the same situation as being as spoilt as I was and Valerie. And I think that probably made them better people, because I then had I found out how the world is actually quite wicked. You've got to make your own way. You can't expect it to be landed on a silver platter. And it's that I want is what I actually was. Quite a nasty little piece of work, I think. But Valerie, of course, being the little girl, didn't have to say anything. She just got.
Well, I want to ask you something slightly more personal, which I think I was considering whether to ask you this or not. But the way you've talked about yourself, you've talked about your childhood and the toys and things. You make no secret of the fact at all that you're gay and that you're very happy to be gay. And I wondered whether you were aware of that from the earliest days, and if you were, whether it actually influenced the way you played games with your toys, or whether it actually influenced the kind of toys you wanted.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm like any little boy. I didn't sort of have the wish to dress up in ladies' clothing or anything. I mean, professionally, I have had to do that at Panto occasionally over the years. No, I think as a child I had my cycle, and you go out cycling and you did all those things. The one thing I hated doing was sport at school. I couldn't see the point of it. Absolute waste of time.
But you were not deprived from those things?
Not at all.
There was no hint that something was unsuitable, and so you couldn't have it?
Well, I wasn't sitting there playing with Barbie dolls. I was quite happy, of course, playing with action men, if you get my drift.
I do.
But of course, when you're very young, you don't really know your majority and what you're going to do. You may have strange feelings you haven't quite got through, and through adolescence. But I'm absolutely convinced from the day one that I came out of Madeline was her name, my blood mother, from her area. Put it that way. I think I was just born gay, and it never. I mean, I had girlfriends, but they were more like companions. They're a bit like Teddy, the girlfriends. And the majority of my friends these days, at my gross age, is the fact that they are actually females. I've got very few male friends, apart from my hubby, of course, and he's much younger than me, and I'm sure that I think he's blind as well, but that's another story. he understands, you know, that having more years on him, he can probably actually see why I've changed through my life. From being that spoilt brat and being gay has really had nothing to do with the fact of you know, being different or all that. I was different at school, and I've often asked them, certainly, you know, around the time of your Larry Graysons on telly and Shut That Door and all that, people always used to call you queer or puff or anything like that. At the end of the day, when I've seen friends that were at school, who are still friends now, thank goodness for Facebook after all these years, and I would say, well, why were you so wicked to us, shall we say, more fey of the fraternity? And they would say, to be honest with you, we didn't know what we were saying. We didn't understand what it was.
The only reason I asked was because the context of toys, the context of a young boy and his toys, at the time that you were growing up is completely different to how it is now. And I wondered if there'd been any difference any discernible difference between what you were able to have and what you were not able to have, and what you might have wanted and didn't get. But it would appear not.
Not a problem.
So of all the toys that you had, of the ones that we talked about, say the bear or the action men, not so much the Lego, I think it didn't excite you quite so much. What were your happiest memories of either of those two, the teddy or the action man?
That morning, my late grandmother, God rest her soul, Elizabeth Lumsden was her name, Elizabeth Lumsden Sinclair, gave me that teddy. I remember it.
Yes. So clear, very important.
Very clear. And she would sit down, I think we had, because she was a great soup maker, and she would sit there, oh, they're lovely, she'd say, oh, they're lovely. I never knew what they were, but obviously it was the soup. But I remember that day she'd actually, and it was 14 shillings, which in those days was a lot of money. And of course she must have been in her mid-60s, I think. So she was on a pension, so she bought it. Dad didn't buy it, or Mum didn't buy it. And there we have it, and I had that for basically 10 years, I would have thought. Probably 10 years I had that.
A good long time.
Yeah.
A good long time.
Yeah.
So that's your happiest memory of your toys, is actually receiving that. And of course the love of your granny.
Yeah, well, and especially because she didn't have a tooth in her head, and I could never understand why her teeth were so perfect. And of course if they went to a dinner dance, Granny would take her teeth out. I'd have my teddy and Granny and my sister there, and she would gurn the whole thing, and we used to fall about laughter the way she could screw her face up. That memory's there. I'm sure that Teddy quite enjoyed it as well.
Did Teddy gurn as well?
Not really, no. He may have been a bit of gurning when he fell apart. I don't think he must have been too happy when the dog got him.
I imagine so. So that's your happiest memory. And I think you've probably told me just about anything you would want to tell me about your toys. So I think I'm going to say thank you very much, Mark, for a very enjoyable interview. I have enjoyed it a lot. And I hope you've enjoyed it too. All these lovely memories of your life.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, if I may say so, a privilege.
Well, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've loved it. Thank you.